This is the session about benefits of offline and online campaigning. So we will have a look on a good connection of online and offline during a campaign, mainly, I guess, an election campaign, because of our speakers and their skills, especially in election campaigns. So let me introduce our speakers first and ask them to come on stage. Our first speaker is Anurag Thakur. He's the third-term elected member of parliament in India from the BJP, the ruling party. He's chairman of the Parliamentary Committee of Information Technology, which is quite well known, especially for the debate which made it to the news, actually international news, of net neutrality. That was a huge debate, and it turned out in India they had a different, and in my opinion, a very good approach to this topic. The decision was quite good from my very personal point of view. What I learned, actually, he was a cricket player before, and a very good one, first-class cricket player. So I'm looking forward to meet the social media expert of the BJP. Anurag, please come on stage. Our second speaker, and he will start with the presentation soon, is Professor Dr. Mario Vogt. He's a member of State Parliament in Thüringen, Germany. He's a member of the CDU, of course, and he's a professor in digital transformation, which is a quite exciting topic at the famous Quadriga University in Berlin. And by the way, he is, beside this actually, he is an advisor to Angela Merkel's campaign since 2005, which is a very long time, actually, all the campaigns. So she became chancellor in that campaign. And currently he's advising the CDU campaign in mobilization and digital campaigning. Please come on stage, Mario Vogt. And last but not least, we have Maurice Vergeer from the Roundabout University in the Netherlands. And he's a scientist in a very, very interesting topic, which is behavioral science, right? That's really amazing. And he analyzes, for example, the social media use of politicians and even candidates, of course, journalists and other media people. And he explores new methods of analyzing large-scale data sets. So beside this, he's of course also teaching in digital political communication and in journalism. So please come on stage, Maurice Vergeer. Okay, we will talk about online and offline campaigns, about especially the connection between these both worlds, which is not always an easy topic. And we will have a deeper look in it. As we learned in a previous session about offline campaigning, still most of the political election campaigns, at least the election campaigns, are won offline and not online. But the online part, especially the social media part, becomes more and more important, and it is a game changer in the last years. So I would like to hand over the stage and the microphone to Mario and ask him to do his presentation he prepared about this topic. Mario, please.
All right. So thank you very much for coming out. Thanks for the Adenauer Foundation hosting this conference. What I like to do in the session now is talking a little bit about connecting offline and online campaigning. I mean, we live in a world where everyone is talking about digital age and things like that, but still, you need people casting their vote in order to have our democracies are running. So we are discussing how these two things try to go together. So, but before that, for the scientists in the room, I quickly put up some sort of research on the matter. And what you're going to find is that offline and online are aligned with each other, and that's something where you really, I mean, if you would have talked about it 5 years ago, probably a lot of people would have told you, yeah, digital is still sitting kind of on the side, as a sidekick on the table, and now they are introduced in the main, on the main table, and a lot of things are driven by digital guys and digital decision making. Which also brings me to the second thing, data and voter information drive decision-making in campaigns, and since digital information are much easier accessible, this is what's happening within campaigns, that they are very focused on that. Thirdly, a more individual direct communications towards mobilization is happening, and this is via social media, via digital, but also, as I talked in an earlier session, grassroots and going door to door. And finally, there is kind of taking over, at least in the Western sense, of Twitter for politics and for political junkies. So what's happening is there is a lot of discussion there, and for agenda setting purposes, you really can find that there is a lot of debate on that. I mean, we can elaborate on what the research in this field is in the session, in the panel, because what I want to talk about is actually more applicable. I want to talk about campaign journey. What does it basically mean today, conceptualizing, thinking about campaigns and how you have to approach it. And what I want to point you at is basically when you think about campaign, think about a journey. And as a political candidate or as a political campaign, you basically want to take the voter on a journey and reach these voters on several touch points where you basically either directly offline or somewhere digitally online, you reach them, touch them, and basically from raising the attention, which is behind the big shoulders of Torben, to the conversion, bring them to some sort of engagement, and ultimately mobilize them for to go vote or to bring their peers. And that's something, when we think about campaigns today, we think about how you take people on this journey and how to link these different things in the digital field also together with the offline events. This is something where we try to connect the dots in order to be successful. All right, I want to talk about 3 things where you can find these linkages between digital and between offline. It's obviously in outreach and communication, it's in mobilization and organization, and in agenda setting and public relations, PR. Let's start off with outreach and communications. What you're going to find there is, and we have to start by thinking about that from this screen, it's basically, Google called it 4 screens to victory. I would say there is like a kind of a tendency for a so-called second screen. So what's happening is today everyone, if they watch TV or if they do something, they still have their cell phone in their hand and do something else. So they follow a certain thing on a second screen, and I talked with Maurice in an earlier session about that. So basically, the voter today is not thinking permanently about elections and about policy issues, but they provide you with different kind of touch points. You can have them offline, or they still have their phone in their hand. And if you, for example, take in the German context people under 30, and 1 out of 3 things they do early in the morning is they take their cell phone and check their Facebook account. So that's something where you really see the second screen thing is taking over. And so what we try to do is basically we either reach them somewhere, or we want to push in information on a certain screen where you can reach them. All right. So first, where's offline and online linked? I mean, in the old days, you had to collect information you had on certain groups, data-wise. You had to collect them somewhere in an Excel sheet, and you really couldn't push it into kind of conceptualized thinking. Now, with like advanced data modeling, with advanced information on the digital side, you really can dive into it. And I just pinned down here the data model of the Republicans in 2016. What they did was basically they took raw data, and I will talk about that tomorrow in the big data session. They combined it with polling. They used certain sorts of analytics and modeled certain voter groups, and then they tried to decide which kind of audience they want to reach with which message and on which channel. And channel, I don't mean here in a sense just digitally, but also where they put their events, where they do a lot of other things. So this is the interesting thing. And I mean, is Vincent here? No, isn't. Question mark. What do you think, how many data points American campaign, being it Hillary Clinton campaign or being a Donald Trump campaign, how many data points do they have on an individual voter in a battleground state? What do you think? Come on, guys, we have to do it interactively. We are here in the afternoon session. 50. How much? 50. 50, okay. 25? Okay, 5,000. They have 5,000 individual information about a voter in a battleground state. That's crazy. I mean, not possible with German data protection laws, luckily, but that's something where you really can see, if I know so much about a voter, I easily can decide on which certain ways of communication I'm gonna reach out to them. And so this drives them where I hold events, where I do a door-to-door campaign, or where I invest in digital outreach. And here, for example, this is a state, and this is basically a picture taken out of the Trump campaign. And here, every dot you can find here, it's an individual voter they reached out to. And so that's, I'm going to talk about it tomorrow. But this is basically where it all starts off, and where, firstly, campaigns are driven by better information through more data. And that's something which is happening in American campaigns. You can find it in South America, less so in Europe, but still in the UK or in France, they also have a good chance of using data. Now, second thing, if you have this information, you know where to hold rallies, where you hold events. You are able to push quickly information through digital means to your peers. And so, for example, here, it's an app of the Cruz campaign, and they set up like a rally the very next day, and then they pushed it through their people, and like, I don't know, like 1,000 or so showed up there. And this is the interesting thing, you even could RSVP there digitally, and so people collected more information on this respected supporter again. And this is just something I want to point out. Like in the old days, you really had to plan advance your campaign tour, because you had to inform everyone with some posters and billboards and things like that. And now they are pushing it through digital, and they bring huge crowds there just by advertising it online. And here, ultimately, I mean, he's a nice guy. That's me. That's Marco Rubio. He's one of the presidential candidates. And what you're going to find here is basically the event was to fire up your supporters. But what Rubio, at least the same amount of time took, was going around taking selfie pictures with the crowd there in order to use digital reach to basically reach out to a bigger group of people. So there you can find events are like the classical mean, the offline stuff, but you try to reach out in the online world as well. Okay, not just for Anurag's sake, but also because I think it's very interesting to see that that's basically a hologram event in India. So this is Mr. Modi. He's not real here. I mean, he's real, but he's a hologram. So he's 3D. So, and the BGP did basically several hundred such events over India. And so there you can find basically the biggest linkage between digital and offline things. All right. Third field is targeted content. And that's, again, taken from an American campaign, but you can find it also in Europe. This is the state of Florida. And here, every county is shown where you can find what is the most searched topic politically in Florida. And here you find it's abortion, and down here you can find immigration. And you can find this on a daily basis. Now, what do campaigns do? They basically decide where to place certain ads, where to place certain billboards, and where to hold rallies with a certain issue. So there you can find that the search, which is done digitally, drives a lot of information in the campaign. And so that's something both campaigns did. And what they also did was what they call hyperlocal targeting. So for example, down here, if you see like the really red areas, these were people which were searching for voter registration. So they were targeting voter registration very down on the postal code, and that's something where they placed then Facebook hyperlocal ads in order to reach out to people to do that. So these search inquiries basically drive where you put your billboards, and they also drive online ads. And that's something you're going to find here. I hope you can see it. This is the biggest growing market all over the globe when it comes to campaigning. It's online ads. And I mean, I talk also to corporations. In the corporate world right now, online ads make already almost 50% of the media budget. 50%. In political campaigns, probably around about, in the US, 25%, in European campaigns, probably around 15%, 10%, 10 to 15%. So there you can see how quickly this will catch up in the political field. And there you can see targeted content, real-time, hyperlocal, and very narrow-casted to the individual is going to taking over marketing. And if I would have more time, and we can do that later, I can talk about how Facebook is basically identifying every one of you here in the room, what they call moments and mindsets. Mindsets basically mean you are put in a basket, and people target you specifically on certain criteria they figured out about you. And they have like time-bound moments they identified about you where you get pushed information. So for example, if you buy a new car and you post it on Facebook, they know it and they place basically ads around that. All right. So it's taking over a very traditional means in the political field, telemarketing. Less so in Europe, but more in the US or in South America. Telemarketing, telephone canvassing is really big. But today in the digital world, you not just can push the script in there, but you also can basically have programs as apps put on your cell phone where you can have refused, not home, answering machine, busy signal. And these kind of instruments push back into the database and they enhance the data which political campaigns want to collect about you. And you can find it, I've seen instruments like that even in Mongolia. So it's not just like in the US, it's also like all over the globe. All right, quickly run through. Communication, also testing everything. Digital makes it possible that you can test for very low cost basically everything, from message over color through photo and copy. In the old days, where's Florence? Florence, are you in the room? No. Florence works for a very good opinion poll company, and they use a lot of focus groups. Today, you can do this online. And online, basically, what's happening is you identify what is the best fitting message which you can push through, not just with the digital things here, for example, Bernie Sanders, but also what you can do offline. And so the interesting thing, though, is what you're going to find that a lot of campaigns basically adapt to that. And I've seen the test book of the Republicans and of the Democrats, and these test books, what they did online testing, down to the individual framing and phrasing was like 250 pages. So this is it's really big. It's becoming, catching up very quickly. All right, and finally, presenting the policy platform. I mean, this is what campaigns are ultimately all about. You have to reach out and try to explain the issues which are out there and what is your stand on that. And here I took something from the Obama campaign, and what they basically did was they took the policy platform of Obama and they said, well, there's the life of Julia when she's 3 years old, and this is how the policy of Obama will affect her, and this is what Mitt Romney does. And so they went through that and they tried to explain a very kind of dry policy platform in a very kind of creative way. And there you can see digital is taking over, also explaining and framing policy debates. All right, here privatizing political discourse, but that's all right. Okay, quickly run through. Second thing is mobilization and organization. And there you can find that digital and offline are really growing together. In the old days, you had to recruit people from down here, and you want to make them activists and ambassadors over here for your political cause. And it took pretty long. And now, today, you can convert them more easily on and stick together with them through digital means and through online stuff. And I quickly want to show you some. So, for example, I'll go through that. So, for example, you can engage and organize them through applications. I showed in the earlier session, this is what we did, or what we do right now in Germany. We invented an app where you basically can see the action of our grassroots team, and every individual pushes back the information in our central dashboard, and so I can see and I can identify how many doors we have knocked today. So if you ask me tomorrow, I can tell you how many doors have been knocked today. So this is something where we really try to get the grassroots involved, and here you can see things which are usually very offline, you know, talking people is now pushing through digital means back into the central headquarters, and this makes politics more responsible for what's happening out there, because sometimes a politician proclaim things they then not do. Surprising. Okay, there's another thing, and in the old days, you had like a local a board where you put, this is my best volunteer and this is my best volunteer. Today you can all do it digitally, and I mean gamification is a really big thing in the political field. So for example, this is taken out of the app which we have. Basically, the ladder of engagement you have seen earlier, it's basically here. You start as a newbie, and you can, at the end, you can become the chancellor maker, you know, or the maker of the chancellery. So that's something where you reach an individual level and you give people missions to do. So for example, you have to knock 60 doors in order to reach the next level and things like that. Sounds crazy, but the thing is, gamification basically comes from the digital world. But it's really taking a lot of effect within offline activities, within campaigns, because people want to be driven by competition. So, and this is something you put competition in there, and it's very successful, at least in campaigning terms. Obviously, a second thing in mobilization is share your story. Here's something I took out from the Knesset election. Politics is a good thing. So I voted, basically I'm going to show to all my friends. So that's something, the offline act basically is pushed through digital means to your followers. But also, I mean, you push what you have achieved. So this is something like a Facebook message of how many doors I have knocked on the day. I can push that out of my app. Where do all this information land? Basically in dashboards. So this is something from the Christian Democrats, where you really can find how many doors have been knocked in a certain city or in a certain area. So this is something where I really have a transparent way of communication, what's going on in my campaign. And this is ultimately what in mobilization, the conversion between offline and digital is achieving. Now, fundraising, also very big thing, and here you just can see, this is the test booklet of the Obama campaign. It's one day inside a fundraising machine of Obama. It's all email. Fundraising used to be taking place in such rooms like that. Now it's very heavily in online. And what you're going to find is, this is basically the same fundraising thing, but here you can see there are different lines. And the line, I will be outspent, and the line, there's thankful every day, there's a difference between 2 million just for the line. And there you can see this is all testing done, but ultimately it brings a lot of money into the pockets. So online fundraising is a big thing, and it's taking over globally. Final thing, agenda setting and PR. And in the third field, and I quickly want to introduce that, we just rolled this out in Germany, we try to agenda set and make public relations out of something we did offline, but we rolled it out digitally. So when we started our campaign, we found a hashtag, fit it with Google. For the Asian friends in the room, also in German, it means nothing, you know, so that's something, it's a really crazy shortcut. Everyone was wondering. But basically, this fit it with Google means for a Germany where we live good and where we like to live. So that's something it's a pretty long phrase, but this became self-explanatory. So this fit it with Google, we used already to basically rent a house in Berlin, a former shopping center, and there we set up a very modern presentation of our policy platform. So our policy platform is presented there in different rooms, and there people, and specifically journalists, can go and they can see what our political program basically means in the next 4 years to come. So, and this is something where we really try to do that. It's a clear offline event. But you know what? We do almost on a daily basis so-called Insta walks there, where we have influencers go through there and give their commentary. So digital is driving, is reaching out and explaining our policy platform. And that's something where you can see how big of the effect coming and going. All right, wrapping this up. If you want to explain also how you politically can form a coalition, you can put out a press release. It used to be like that. Here's an example, I think it's from Portugal, how they did it. There are two left-wing parties and they explain how they get together. Sorry, wasn't in sync, but it's basically the same, you know? And they walk through each other, and so they explain how they basically wanted to form a coalition. And there you can see there's a lot of media around, which is basically taking pictures and things like that. And so campaigning is taking like a natural thing behind closed doors. We want to form a coalition, is taking over and explaining it digitally, publicly. And yeah, I think it's self-explanatory, but there you can see how big is the interlinkage. So 2 more slides. Obviously, agenda setting is a very big thing, and digital is driving the offline world here. And I mean, I have to say that Donald Trump really, took it completely to a different level. And I want to take something which in my opinion explains specifically how smartly he used Twitter in order to agenda set and have earned media coverage in the political field. So, I mean, American colleagues basically estimated how much of free media Donald Trump earned in his presidential campaign. What do you guess? If he would have advertised, how many money he would have had to spend in order to cover the same ground as the free advertisement he did through Twitter and all the other means? What do you think? You know it, I guess, Maurice.
No, I said upward.
Upward.
More than this.
2 billion. 2 billion. That's crazy.
I was right.
Yeah, you were right. Okay, thanks. 2 billion, and that's crazy. Free coverage just by putting out controversial tweets. And here you see something. Boeing is building a brand new 747 Air Force, one of the future presidents, but costs one for future presidents, but costs are out of control, more than 4 billion. Cancel order. This was done after he was elected in December 2016. And here's the thing. I mean, you can imagine what happened to the Boeing stock and a lot of other things, but he tweeted it on the day where he received word that he has to pay a fine for Trump University. You might remember. He put up there a private university, which weren't really a university, and at the very same day, he tweeted this. So, and he completely agenda cutted all the journalistic reports about the Trump University with this controversial tweet, because obviously this is something every news show picked up on the very next day. And there you can see this is not just by accident. And if you believe that this is a crazy guy there in the White House, I have to tell you, I mean, they do it very purposefully. And we have to be aware of that. And I mean, for the journalists in the room, that's something where digital is also driving a lot of offline coverage. All right, I'm almost through. And just to raise you with more worries, that's something, basically here you can see mainstream media in their reports, like New York Times, Washington Post, and things like that, and what happened in August to election day, so in the hot period, how much it was seen in Facebook, the top 20 election stories. 7.3 million. Fake news, 8.7 million. So the reach of fake news, of misinformation, has been bigger, and obviously this also drove media coverage in the offline field, and that's something which in my opinion is worrisome. And I mean, if 1 million Americans believe that Pope Francis endorses Donald Trump, this means a lot, you know, so just to put this out. All right, final thing, here's the good and the upside. I mean, also, if you take SMS or text messaging and WhatsApping also into the consideration, citizen journalism reports Sierra Leone election by SMS. So there you can see having the democratic process open up and using digital means in order to spread the democratic values, in my opinion, also helps in the third field of agenda setting. Now, wrapping it up, there's a generation that is born mobile and loves everything personalized, customized, free, and now. And I can tell you, this will never change. It will become more intense. And therefore, campaigning-wise, we really look for ways to reach out in a way to communicate, in a way to mobilize, in a way to agenda set. And that will intensify. So when we host this conference in 2 years from now, digital will completely take over all the political campaigns all around the globe because it's driving the communication cycle. But still there are areas out there where the elements of offline and digital ecosystems are linked to each other and they will get closer and closer together. So digital will drive developments in campaigning, but they won't completely substitute offline campaigning because politics is still a people's business, offline and online, and I'm really happy to discuss this now. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mario, for this very interesting presentation. So we can see how digital takes over more and more of a political campaign and how the offline and the online campaigning tools are a best case combined. Thank you for these fantastic examples. Anurag, I would like to ask you to tell us a little bit about how that works in India, because we saw from Mario's presentation you have very creative ideas from the BGP, so it's not only this virtual Modi who's appearing around this huge country at the same time. I think you have some other good examples from your campaigns. As you like, yeah.
Good afternoon, everyone. I think we have a detailed presentation from Mario, which was very impressive. I'll limit myself to the scale of Indian elections 2014. It's a small country with 1.3 billion people. And as per the Election Commission of India, 814.5 million were eligible voters in 2014 election. This was an increase of close to 100 million voters since the last general elections in 2009. It was the longest and largest election in the history of India. And it was held in 9 phases from 7th of April to 12th of May 2014. Close to 23.1 million were the total eligible voters from the age of 18 to 19 years. The average election turnout during those polls was close to 66.38%, highest ever in the history of Indian elections. Why I'm giving you these details? If I have to speak about India, I just wanted to give the scale of Indian elections in 2014. The outcome of the election was my party, which is the ruling party today, BJP, won 282 seats with a vote share of 31%. And our National Democratic Alliance won 336 seats with a combined vote share of 38.5%. Since 1984 elections, this is the first time ever any political party won a full majority on its own. And the India's oldest party, Indian National Congress, could win only 8.1% seats, which is 44 seats. If I could see in your presentation also, yes, issues are important, but election worldwide are personality driven. So what advantage BJP had in 2014 that it had majority on of its own? We did a lot of brand building exercise around Mr. Modi. The victory of BJP and success of Narendra Modi is a case study in how to build a brand and successfully implement a campaign across a target group and region as diverse as India. Unlike in other countries, we have 22 languages that are notified under the gadget, more than 1,000 dialects, and imagine building a campaign that resonates with over 1 billion people. Now the Narendra Modi team faced a couple of challenges before they start building up the campaign. He was a regional brand as a Gujarat chief minister, very successful chief minister, but not at the national level. Being a 63-year-old man, how to connect with more than 150 million young voters below the age of 30 years. The media was not very friendly since 2002. So despite all these challenges, I think the way he started is, in 2009 January, he joined Twitter. In May 2009, he joined Facebook. He launches his YouTube channel and all that. Narendra Modi attended more than 5,000 events and addressed more than 470 political rallies during the 2014 election campaign over a period of 9 months. Every on-ground activity of Narendra Modi was put online in different formats on each platform to cater to the audience. From rural to urban, from young to old, from women to farmers. And the interesting part was, for the first time ever, the crowdsourcing of issues was done by him on various digital platforms, especially Facebook. So he was able to connect better with people, and he has been looked as a hope for the country. We started our campaign with the announcement of Mr. Modi's name as a Prime Ministerial candidate with a campaign called Mission 272 Plus. How to win that 50% seats to have majority on our own. So Narendra Modi began the campaign in a way by talking to young students with the prestigious colleges like SRCC in Delhi. He spoke about his model of governance, something he had tried, tested, and succeeded in the state of Gujarat. In the 2014 elections, I think there are close to 160 urban seats which are directly affected by the digital media campaign, which had a positive impact on that. And the 2014 election would go down in the history as the first election on where digital crowdsourcing played a key role to understand the key issues with the public. Now, during that time, we had a popular sport called cricket. So the T20 World Cup was going on. The animated advertisements were played very in a planned and systematic manner by not spending much money, but displayed at the right time, spent enough money on that. And that has helped us because a lot of people have started building campaign around it on the social media platforms as well. Now, one of the Congress party senior leaders commented on Narendra Modi that he used to sell tea, how he can govern the country, how he can run the country. But he put that to his advantage. Started a program called Chai Pe Charcha, discussion over a cup of tea. So people used to gather around the tea stalls. They could see or talk to Modi over a webcast and sip tea with the paper cups with his photograph and BJP logo on that, election symbol on that. 3D hologram you talked about. Even for people like me, when we say the younger generation, it not only drove people from the rural areas, it was a big attraction in the cities too. Because this technology was used by him in a very systematic manner, where he gave over a dozen hologram speeches to 900 rallies, each drawing an average crowd of more than 10,000 people. So you can imagine the scale, addressing millions of Indians by using this technology every time. So I think that was one of the successful campaigns we had during that time. Now when we talk about offline and online campaign advantages, you can't say that we have to go with only online campaign. As Mario rightly said, offline campaign and online campaigns are aligned with each other. You need to create a lot of events on ground to take the advantage or scale it up at the online or on your digital platform. So what are the tools available with us as far as the offline and online campaigns is concerned? Traditionally we have advertisement platforms with the TV advertisements, print advertisement, radio jingles, social media from Facebook to Twitter to others, and Google advertisements. I personally feel there are more tools available online, but offline tools have their own importance. A lot of people ask the question, door-to-door campaign, how successful, how useful is that? I think nothing is more important than reaching out personally to anyone, whether it is your political worker or individually a candidate, a leader, he reaches out to someone. I think that's an emotional appeal to connect with someone, and that helps. If I have to talk about offline campaign, we had from banners and hoarding in various public places, pamphlets to be distributed at every household, to political worker, railway stations, to others. Then we have given a missed call number to register as a volunteer, as well as to understand what are the policies of BJP, to collect the data and go back to those millions of people. Door-to-door campaign was held by volunteers to reach out to every household. If I have to talk about my 3 elections of parliament, like the 3 elections I contested, I come from a rural constituency. Everyone expects me to be in their village. I have more than 5,000 village, close to 1,700 polling stations. So they expect a member of parliament to come to each and every polling booth, which is not physically possible. So on your behalf, it is your political workers, they reach out. You campaign, you send your video messages, you send your other messages to them. At the same time, merchandise also help. From t-shirts, cap, badges, stickers, even from a face mask, like Modi has millions of face masks all over the country, which was distributed during the public meetings. Public meetings and rallies played a major role throughout the country in last so many decades. But over a period of time, there's a shortage of time. Everyone feels the time is very, very important. You don't have that kind of gathering today. But with Modi's popularity, we could see people coming from 100,000 to 10,000 to 1 million in each rally, that kind of crowd coming to listen to his speeches. So that was extraordinary. On ground, what we do, if I have to share something, what I do in my constituency, suppose on each polling booth, if we have 1,000 votes, we identify top 30 political workers. Each worker has to look at 30 voters. He further highlight which are pro our party, which are against, which are the neutral floating votes. So we work on those votes, how many votes stay in the village, how many of them migrate to work outside, how to work and tap each and every vote. And the way you said, tracking of the voters, we don't do it digitally, but we have our monthly meetings where they come and give the record that what they have done. We run the mobile and video vans. You may call it digital, but it actually is a offline campaign where the video is played, the message is gone, your policies and others are expressed. We used normal mobile phones with a projector. A wall was used and a video was placed with 150, 20, 30, 40 people, whatever is available. So our volunteers used to go and display those videos and address public. I am not physically present, but my video was displayed and reached out. My message was conveyed. Smaller village, 30 people living in that village, our people used to visit that. The small iPad kind of a thing, we've given the cheaper options to them, where they used to play recorded messages, video campaigns and all, tea stalls, not the libraries, but the grounds to the smaller villages and all that. If you have to buy the data card, we have preloaded the popular Indian movies, but in between there was a message of the political party, which will come for 10 seconds, 30 seconds and all that. So those free data cards were distributed. People could see movies as well as our campaign as well. So what were the options, online options available with us? We saw the Modi's graph going from 8 million to 30 million in last few years because he connected well with the people. He understood their aspirations. Crowdsourcing helped to understand what are the real issues with the public. And I think he addressed that. So we also gave options of dial-in number to hear the candidate speak or the Narendra Modi speak at the live speech. Voice call messages, emails, mobile volunteer calls, calling everyone and taking the feedback, how's the campaign going. WhatsApp was the most successful, making WhatsApp groups. I think that's the most successful in the rural areas. Online donation, rightly said by Mario, that also helped us. Facebook, again, Facebook, Twitter, Google Hangout, Twitter. Yuva TV is one TV which we used to record and do the webcasting, communicating directly with showing the live feed of Modi rallies and all that. These are the few things. I can add more, but I think it's better to take questions and what they want to understand or what, if I have to throw some light on that. So I'll stop here and wait for more questions. Thank you.
A perfect timing. Thank you very much. I would like to ask Maurice as well to add some from a more scientific point of view. Of course, you can do it from here, or you stay here. Perfect. So that would be interesting to have your scientific point of view, and then we open the floor to the questions. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. This is on, yes, this is on. So, I'm speaking, of course, from the Dutch perspective, because that's where my expertise comes from. Looking at one of the benefits of online campaigning, of course, is you basically try to take control of all communication available. And one particular nuisance are, of course, journalists. They are the middleman between, were traditionally the middleman between politicians and the audience, and you can factor them out right now. Well, that's basically it. Because journalists are mostly quite critical, and you don't want them. Okay, this is decades ago when the Netherlands was a very traditional country. Politicians were initially addressed as sir, and how was your foreign trip, all those kinds of pleasantries. And asking tough questions didn't belong to their profession. But nowadays, the Netherlands has changed. And journalists, some journalists of certain platforms can be quite rude. They have a pass to enter parliament and interview politicians. And they sometimes are basically what we would, in a normal engagement, would consider rude. So to bypass them, social media are perfect. Then again, journalists still have their field day, because then they analyze the social media data and see what's happening. For instance, the Labour Party received a prize for best website, and well, they of course announced it on social media that they won a prize, etc. Then the journalists went to search for, well, what is this prize, etc., etc. And apparently this prize was financed by indirectly by the Labour Party. So it's basically giving themselves a prize. So you have to be very careful with this. The Netherlands is basically one of the first countries where social media campaigning really took off. Apparently Dutch politicians are quite eager to adopt new technology. And in the European Parliament elections of 2009, there were about 35 candidates that used Twitter. And back then Twitter was still quite new. Nobody really knew how it should be used. But it took off, and since then the Netherlands is not only politicians, but the general population is quite active in using Twitter. I believe Japan is number one. Well, not my numbers, but my, okay. Anyhow, and the Dutch are in second place. Resulting in that Dutch hashtags sometimes come into enter the global trending topics, and the Americans don't know how to make sense of these Dutch hashtags. As for campaigning, we've had elections in 2017 in March, and basically, whereas the previous elections were mostly about Twitter as a social campaigning tool, now Facebook is really becoming prominent. But there is a difference, whereas Twitter is mostly on a personalized level, so candidates using Twitter to communicate to people. Facebook is more in line with party communication. And that ties in that Twitter is more of a public social media, whereas Facebook tends to be, well, more for private reasons. Although some candidates specifically signed up for, well, developed a username tying into the elections. As for electoral success, Well, you should join a Dutch political party, because the Dutch party system is probably the best one to test whether it's successful or not. We have a multi-party system, so we have, particularly last elections, we had 28 political parties joining the elections and over 1,000 candidates. Sorry? Okay.
We had more than 8,251 candidates.
Okay.
With more than 100 parties.
But in New Delhi, there are more people living than in the whole of the Netherlands. So, I lost my track here. No, it's okay.
Good testing ground. You were elaborating.
Yeah. So, because 28 parties, 28 different strategies, and over 1,000 different candidates, and not everybody uses social media, but then it's quite easy to compare how many preferential votes and how many followers these candidates get. And whereas in a two-party system, for instance, like in the US, it's winner takes all, and if you flip a coin, well, half of the time you're right in predicting the election outcome. Yeah, that's basically it. In the Netherlands, it's much more difficult, but because we have a preferential voting system, you can vote for any candidate you wish. And then compare, for instance, the number of likes, the number of followers, tweeting activity, all those kind of things, and related to the number of preferential votes a candidate has received. For instance, someone who tweets quite often, does he or she get more preferential votes than someone who doesn't tweet at all? So these are questions we as scientists try to answer. And it's not always about winning the elections, but gaining a couple of seats in parliament. For instance, even though, yeah, so now we have in parliament a third populist party, the Forum for Democracy, and it now it consists of two members. One used to be considered a charlatan. He would come into discussion programs and would be quite pedantic in his opinions and putting right other people. But he formed a political party because he was dissatisfied with the political system in the Netherlands. And of course, our system is not perfect, but he made it a key factor in the campaign. He joined up with another lawyer who was also quite flamboyant, who defended high prolific criminals. They set up a Facebook campaign. They did no offline campaigning because, well, they were very small, didn't have any budget at all, and started using Facebook to campaign. Made small videos, posted them online, etc., etc. And they were hugely popular. And they ended up with 2 seats, whereas they basically thought, well, 0 or maybe 1. No, they they won 2 seats. And basically they're still continuing the campaign, talking about permanent campaigning. That's also one of the benefits of social media. You just keep on going using social media and putting your message out, whether it's about certain political issues or certain societal events. You just can voice your opinions as a candidate or as a politician or as a political party on social media. And people will know to find you. And if they don't, the journalists will. Another thing, yeah, okay. Am I short for time?
A little bit, but
okay.
Please, your last point, no worries.
Okay. One of the, about engaging the voter, of course, American late night shows are quite popular, Stephen Colbert show. And of course, we have a similar one in the Netherlands, Arjen Lubach. He's a comedian, and on Sunday evenings he has a show. And he was last year, or late 2006, worldwide famous because he made a video called Holland Second. Because, well, Trump came to power and he said America first. And then he made a very funny video, look it up on YouTube, saying, if America is first, can Holland be second? So, but he made an app for the elections, and it was hugely popular, and it's called Chambergotchi. And it's a similar app as Tamagotchi. You remember Tamagotchi? It's a sort of Japanese toy and trying to keep a small animal alive by petting it, giving it water and food. Chambergotchi is the same, but then you get assigned a party leader. So a party leader of one of the political parties would be assigned to you, and you have to stroke him and talk to him and be nice to him. And yeah, it was hugely popular, and you could have luck using the app. Your favorite party leader would be assigned to you, but you could also end up with your least favorite one. And of course, you cannot die and let him or her die as well. And his show during the elections and his specially programmed app were hugely popular, and well, I'm sure it engaged and may have mobilized certain voters. Yeah.
Thank you very much. So I think gamification is a big thing even in the campaigns. So we have it in the German app. We have similar things in India, and I mean, in that case, it's not a campaigning tool. It's more a kind of satire about, but it attracts the people to vote as well.
Increase voter turnout.
Yeah, exactly. So thank you very much for the presentations. I would like to open the floor now. We have another 30 minutes for questions. May I see your hand just, and Jonas will bring you the mic.
Thank you very much for the presentation. My name is Astrid Lenger. I'm a journalist. I have a question concerning Germany. I'm wondering why, with what purpose the Connect 17 app was launched, or the attempts, just like in the shopping mall that you were pointing out, with the touchable election program were initiated. Is it to... Because most voters in Germany still are not the young generation, so I would say most voters are 35 plus. Why would you, with which idea, with which motivation did you launch these very online friendly programs? Is it to target the younger voters? Is it to, because you believe it's the future and you got to be there somewhere too? Thank you.
I think that question goes to Mario, right? Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for the question. First of all, I mean, I can say it. We expect to be that more than 50% of the voters going to be older than 60 at this election, which is a very reasonable estimation, I have to say. And therefore, it's a very good question you raised. I mean, isn't it too tech savvy? Isn't it too like fancy? But I mean, ultimately, I believe campaigns are communication-wise about a very easy question. But it's tough to answer it, because every election is based around the question, change versus more of the same. And you have to make an argument, either you want to stay course or you want to change government, usually. So this is the communication thing behind it. So, I mean, this also relates to strategy. But then the question is how you can persuade people for this message, or how you can mobilize people who are locked in with you already in order to gain the necessary percentages. So therefore, we decided early on to say, well, you know what? Persuasion is one thing, and reaching out, and with Angela Merkel, we have a very good candidate and a very strong brand. But still, we need people to get on board mobilizing them. So therefore, we took a concerted effort to say, you know what? We, for the first time, want to structure a program where we reach out to voters in our potentially stronger areas and turning them out voting either early or like voting at all. And that's something where we really try to do a concerted effort. And this is what Connect 17 is. And coming back to your question, isn't it like for young people? I mean, for young people, the app is really good because, the app is good for us in order to track what are the activities on the ground. You know, are the people are doing what they have promised? You know, because sometimes they say, yeah, we're gonna go door to door, but they don't do, you know. So this is something which helps you as a national campaign. But within this app, we have gamification, we have like, and there comes like the young thing in it, we have like things where people can compete against each other. And I mean, young people who are very big base of our volunteers, they are using this gamification to gain new points, to reach new missions and things like that. And so we drag them in. And if you see the concept ladder of engagement, we basically try to build up their engagement over time. So, and that's something where we believe it's right. And I mean, the app also helps to identify if our perception of the strongholds we have identified by geographical analysis and targeting, if they are also hold true. You know, I mean, the German data protection laws are very severe. So, I mean, basically, we can't track individual information. And this, to wrap it up, is also part of our campaign narrative. The campaign narrative is that the CDU has an innovative, very good campaign because, I mean, think about it. Angela Merkel is asking the voter for the 4th time to elect her. And I mean, we all have been around like long enough to know that at a certain point, people could raise the question, are they still up to the task? Do they still smart enough? Are they innovative enough? But a campaign also represents, in a way, a kind of a sign if you are still able to develop the best ideas for the country. So I would say innovation and showing an innovative campaign is also part of your narrative in order at least to convince journalists that we are correct, you know, that we are having still the energy and the power to do so. And I think today, and then I'm going to finish it, sorry, I'm a politician, long answers. Today, you need that narrative as well, because people really judge you not just on your candidate and on your policy platform, but they also judge you on the style, how you do things. I mean, I don't like that so much, but I still have to live with it, you know? So, and therefore I think this all taken together made us develop this program, which has a very meaning. It's an instrument to mobilize. And around that, we identified things where we really could show that we are the most innovative campaign. I would say from the big parties in Germany, we are. I mean, by all objective standards I can apply here.
Thank you very much. There is another question from the young lady from Indonesia, if I remember right. Yeah?
Yes.
Exactly.
Thank you very much. I just want to ask Prof. Mario, could we apply the strategy of utilizing online and offline campaigns tool for social campaigns? For example, domestic violence, multi-religions harmony. And what are the challenges of mobilized people for social change? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for this question, because I'm a big believer that we're just seeing a tip of the iceberg, what's going to happen in direct mobilization. Because I believe right now we are just talking about election campaigns, we talk about a specific date and we want to win, you know? But ultimately, and that's something we touched on in an earlier debate, it's about how you can deliver meaningful development within your societies. And what I see on two different levels, I see that there's at one, a kind of conversion in the field of corporate communication, grassroots activity, corporate social responsibility. It's growing more together, and digitally they are much more invested in that. And this shows me that something is happening also on the second level, that people actually want to take part in something. You know, they don't want to sign up for a lifetime subscription of being a CDU member, unfortunately, but they want to take part in some sort of activity. And digital tools can help us to basically develop policy grassroots campaigns which drive activities and can give voice what's happening within the society. And I mean, this can start for small things, like for example, infrastructure projects, and can be the big things, like for example, changing a certain kind of policy. So I'm a big believer of that, and I think we just see the tip of the iceberg there.
More questions? Yeah, it's getting late, right? No more questions? Come on. Okay, if not, then maybe let me ask a simple question. So what are in your countries the most important social media tools currently, inclusive also the messenger tools which coming up? So which role do they play? We heard already from Anurag that you use it heavily in India for the campaign, WhatsApp in that case, right? So maybe you could start and let us know, what is the percentage or the impact? So what is your experience with these different tools in India?
Thank you, Mr. Stephen. As I said earlier, that WhatsApp is the most commonly used digital platform. With the maximum numbers, you can form a lot of groups and all that. And even various age groups, from a 14-year-old boy or girl to a 70-year-old man or woman. They use it very frequently for their social messaging, to understand the government or other political parties' campaign or their messaging as well. YouTube was another platform which was very, very successful and has large numbers for your speeches and videos. Facebook, I think that connects millions and millions of Indians. I think that is why that attracted Mark Zuckerberg to come to India for 1 billion more numbers. But I personally feel these are the few tools which are very, very useful and successful. But we should not forget SMS. You know, even today, as far as the farmers are concerned, our government has sent billions of messages to these farmers regarding their crop, insurance, various other government schemes and all that. Because a common man who's not using a smartphone, they're dependent only on the SMS. So that is still a very, very useful tool, platform to convey your messages. Not every area is Wi-Fi or have a broadband connectivity. But by December 2018, with BharatNet project, we'll be connecting close to 250,000 panchayats, which cover each and every village, which is 600,000 villages in India, will be connected by December 2018 with broadband connectivity. So I think then the scale will be different. What we are talking today, and when a common man will be empowered with $20 smartphone, which is given by Reliance in India, and that will be reimbursed. Can you imagine $25 you pay for a smartphone and you get that $25 back after 3 years? And that is a digital empowerment. With paying only $2 a month, you get a Wi-Fi connectivity or a broadband connectivity. I think that look at the scale India looking at. With 1.3 billion people getting online, then there's going to be war between every platform who's going to have what numbers, because that's going to increase their valuations in the market as well. So that is why everyone is focusing in the Indian market. That's a big way. And our government, I can show, if you have a minute, I can share an example. We have a lot of schemes like where subsidies goes to the farmers, common man, poor man, public distribution system and all that. In the previous system where we didn't have a digital platform or a more accountability and transparency in the system, there used to be millions ghost card holders where billions of dollars used to go into the pockets of various people downstream. With our government coming in, bringing in more transparency, making them more accountable, keeping checks, and withdrawing few subsidies, we have saved close to $10 billion in last 1 year. It's not a small figure. That is what technology and digital platforms can bring. Connectivity as well as transparency, and can make the system more accountable. So I think as far as the Indonesia's representative issue was, you can use the digital platform that you want to be for social, political, government messaging, as well as for the networking. Basically, it is the network. You have to utilize it the way you want to. And there is no bar to it. Between two individuals, bilateral, government, social, any kind of. So I think it's a big thing. In the media, what initially said, I think we faced that in Indian elections, where the media house used to hold you for ransom, that how they're gonna project you as a candidate. Today, that is not the story. You can convey whatever you have to millions of people. You don't need, if I have 1.5 million Facebook followers and 890,000 Twitter followers, why should I look at any newspaper in Himachal, in my state, in my constituency? The maximum selling newspaper is 100,000 copies, but I already have 1.5 million followers on Facebook. So it doesn't matter much now what the media says, because I can communicate directly. That is what advantage brings, especially to the politician and to the governments, to keep a check and also to communicate.
Thank you. That's quite interesting, especially the SMS part. Of course, I think it doesn't play a big role in Germany, in the Netherlands. But I know from my colleague Christian, who served for 4 years in Africa as a director of the media program there, that it plays a very, very huge role in many countries in Africa as well. And so we often forget it, but indeed, it's a very important tool. There's one more question.
Hello. In terms of campaign regulation, so far for the traditional media, the regulations are there already, and I think regulations also for the new media is catching up. So what do you think is the biggest threat to the use of new media in terms of regulation, and how do you think campaigns or what should be the adaptation of campaigns in case these regulations would exist to new media?
Very good question. I mean, because, different countries, different kind of regulations. Quite frankly speaking, digital campaigning today is still a trial and error for certain reasons. First of all, we have, and Anurag was completely right about the competition between the platforms, because basically what's happening is, there are platforms competing with different kind of instruments, and campaigns try to adapt to that. So for example, a year ago we were talking big time about Snapchat, you know. Right now I would say Snapchat is already going down, you know. Instagram is catching up quickly. I mean, I have seen campaigning stuff in South America where I have to say, come on, that's perfect. You know, for example, if you take the revolution or the demonstration in Venezuela, you know, there you're gonna find that a lot of politicians there, they really cover everything on Instagram, and a lot of people, I mean, they have sometimes like 100,000 people like following or doing things like that. So that's something where you see that we have changing environment. And if we talk in 2 years from now, we probably talk about different platforms. I'm still certain that Facebook's going to be around because, I mean, it's the biggest marketing platform with a lot of reach. But there begins already the debate about regulation. So 2 ways. One is like within Facebook, if Facebook can be part of the solution, you know, talking about fake news and all these other things, but also how to basically use Facebook, the Facebook data in a, like, let's say, meaningful way. And here's the thing, I mean, I'm completely with Anurag about the question how to use it as a tool of empowerment. Problem is, I mean, within Facebook, the information is endlessly. The data information is endlessly. And I could really niche target every one of you here in the room. You know, so, and that's something, are we want to go there? I mean, at least I can tell you in the German context, we are very resistant to that. We are very cautious. Problem is, you have parties who don't care, you know, and so they try to use that. And now you have to ask yourself, either you regulate it or you adapt to that, or you stay away from that. So for example, this was a big debate in our, please don't quote me on that, but in our this election cycle, if we would go to kind of form of targeting within Facebook. And I'm live on here? No. And so that's something, how to do that. I mean, profiling, things like that. And this is, in the German context, still not regulated. And I'm really lobbying for regulations there, at least to have everyone with a clear standard set, you know. And that's something where we really have to be sensitive. And now, touching on a completely different angle, I mean, we are still 3 weeks to the election. And I mean, what we have seen in the US election and the French election showed me that people from outside of Germany try to impact, or from outside a country, try to impact the election within a country. I mean, and this is something where regulation doesn't help you, basically. You need procedures, you know, in order to successfully defend that. And so there is a lot of things, lot of ground to be covered there. And what I think we're going to see a much bigger sensitivity towards digital campaigning in the years to come.
I have an additional remark to make about regulation. Of course, there's the regulation of social media data, but there is also the regulation on speech on the social media. This morning, the lady from the Philippines was harassed on social media quite fiercely. Mariah. And this happened also in the early stages of the Dutch election campaign. A party leader, she's a Dutch person, but she has a dark skin color. And she is an advocate for abolishing Black Peter. He's a character in St. Nicholas, because it's discriminating. So when she fought for that cause, she was harassed on social media that she should return to home, wherever that is, etc., etc. So these were, and she should basically die or being hung, and there was a photo fabrication of a lynching. People have been prosecuted because of that. In the Netherlands, this is considered hate speech. and this is not allowed. So even though social media are for public communication, it is not allowed to say anything all the time. We have a freedom of speech, but there are always certain restrictions. Most restrictions are behind the fact, so you will be prosecuted. But, and for instance, simple things like there's this example of when you're in a cinema, in a dark cinema, you should not shout fire, because you can imagine what would happen if you would. A massive panic would break out. So everything you say in public, you are responsible for the consequences of your speech. So basically, yeah. Well, most in 19.
Free speech, right?
Yes. No. But 99.99999% of the time, there's no real consequence. But in terms of hate speech, sometimes people may think, well, everybody's talking like that on social media. Maybe we should stop talking about it and take it a step further. And then we have a real problem. So in this case, these people were prosecuted and then fined or getting some sentences. And that's, I think, a good thing, because even though there is freedom of speech, and that basically holds for every free country, that doesn't mean you can say everything. Yeah.
But I'm an advocate for the free speech. But at the same time, there should be countries' interest which should be looked after first, I think. Please carry on.
No, I quickly wanted to touch on something. We are just talking about communication and big data here, but I mean, I'm right now working on a project. I mean, in the field of industries, in the field of public data which are available. So I just give you an example. In Germany now we have smart meter system, which basically means you can have data about when Maurice is using his shower and using his light, because basically you can see this glitch in the data. So now the question is, what do you do with these kind of data? Are we willing to basically let Google develop a new kind of analytics, business intelligence to that? Or are we saying, well, this is public good and we invested for the infrastructure, so we keep them? And are we even willing to use these data in order to develop new kind of, let's say, services or applications or things like that? So what I just wanted to show you is, right now we're just talking about social media and communication, but ultimately this is changing, and that's why we talk about disruption and not just like development. This is changing our way of life, and we have to make sure that we are in a way on board with the developments, but also think a little bit about the consequences. And I mean, again, I'm for digital transformation. I'm really happy and supportive to that, but I haven't made my mind up completely how I would handle this, because I think it's a very sophisticated question, you know.
Yeah, as you may have realized, we totally changed the topic, which is actually not bad, because it's a very, very interesting topic indeed. Let me mention one thing as well, because we talked about free speech and hate speech, which is a huge topic in Germany as well. So beside our actually topic, I would like to mention this, because I was witnessing a podium discussion on a conference in Hamburg, where the main lobbyist actually from Facebook, the lady, you know her as well, right? She was on stage and together with the guy from our Ministry of Justice, who invented this famous $50 million law if Facebook doesn't turn down hate speech within 24 hours. So this was really a very, very interesting discussion, and so the bill passed the parliament, so it's a law now, and but I think, and I agree totally to your opinion, the discussion is not over yet. So this will take us a long time, much longer than we have today, because on my clock down here are just 2 minutes left. I would like to take these 2 minutes first to thank my panelists, my presentators. Yeah, thank you very much. I think that was a very interesting topic, and please give them a big hand.